Kamloops is a city in south-central British Columbia at the confluence of the North and South Thompson Rivers. They join in Kamloops to become the Thompson River. In 2024, Kamloops' population numbered just over 108,000. Kamloops is in the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. The first European explorers arrived in 1811. The Overlanders of 1862 came from southern Manitoba, bound for the BC goldfields. Some Overlanders stayed and formed the new community of Kamloops. The city was incorporated in 1893 with about 500 residents. The Canadian Pacific Railway came through in 1886. The Canadian National arrived in 1912. Kamloops became a transportation hub. Heavy industries in the area include primary resource processing. The BC Lottery Corporation has its headquarters here. Kamloops celebrates local talent. The Kamloops Art Gallery, Kamloops Symphony Orchestra, Western Canada Theatre. The BC Wildlife Park is one of the tourist attractions. Tourism accounts for almost 2 million visitors each year. Kamloops is the tournament capital of Canada and hosts more than 100 sports tournaments each year. Hillside Stadium adjoins Thompson Rivers University. The Sandman Centre is home to the Kamloops Blazers of the Western Hockey League and a venue for other entertainment. Riverside Park is close to downtown. Hiking and mountain biking are popular. Nearby lakes offer paddling, kayaking, and fishing. With 100 lakes within an hour's drive, Kamloops has some of the best freshwater fishing in North America. Every year, lakes in the Thompson-Nicola region are stocked with about 1 million fish, rainbow trout, brook trout, and kokanee salmon. Kamloops has the highest number of golf courses per capita in Canada, with about 13. An extensive trail network and desert-like climate create world-class conditions for mountain biking year-round. The climate is semi-arid due to its rain-shadow location. The area west of Kamloops in the lower Thompson River Valley falls within a desert climate. Kamloops has the third mildest winter of any non-coastal city in Canada. The coldest months are December and January, when the mean temperatures are -2 degrees and -2.7 degrees Celsius. During cold snaps, temperatures can drop to -20 degrees Celsius when Arctic air crosses the Rockies and Columbia Mountains into the interior. Summers are hot, with temperatures occasionally around 40 degrees Celsius. On August 1st, 1919, Captain Ernest O. Hall arrived over Kamloops in a Curtiss JN4 Canuck owned by the Vancouver Aerial Transportation Company. Hall had flown from Merritt, where he had given exhibition flights. After some stunting, Hall landed in the Kamloops exhibition grounds at Fruitlands. The next day, Hall offered flights around the city for $15 each, about $250 of today's dollars. One passenger was Chief Eli LaRue of the St. Paul Reserve, the first Indigenous person to fly in British Columbia. Kamloops received its next aircraft visit in late October 1920. Major Clarence McLaurin was superintendent of the newly created Canadian Air Board Jericho Beach Air Station at Vancouver. He shipped a Curtiss HS-2L to Kearney's Landing near Sicamous for an aerial survey of the Kamloops Forest District. For 14 days, McLaurin, with a Dominion government forester, a photographer, and air mechanic, flew the Curtiss HS-2L over an area of 100 miles on each side of the valleys between Kamloops and Sicamous. In the summer of 1921, McLaurin flew an HS-2L from Jericho Beach to Kamloops to help in forest fire protection and other forestry surveys. The flight from the coast took 2 hours and 45 minutes and was the first time a flying boat was flown over the coast mountains. In 1922, Jericho Beach detached 2 aircraft to Kamloops for forestry patrols. For the rest of the 1920s, RCAF aircraft from Jericho Beach would serve the Kamloops-Shuswap area from Kamloops for topographical surveys and forestry patrols. Dominion surveyor C.H. Taggart was based in Kamloops. He produced a series of topographical maps from data gathered by aircraft based at Kamloops. As of 1927, the city still did not have an airfield. In the past, aircraft landed on the exhibition grounds and polo field, as well as the St. Paul Reserve. The Kamloops Board of Trade began a search for a site, initially choosing the reserve. Negotiations collapsed, largely due to financial reasons. Flying Officer E.J.A. Burke, known as Patty Burke, of the RCAF station at Jericho Beach, was temporarily stationed at Salmon Arm. In August 1928, Burke attended a meeting at Kamloops about forming a light airplane club. In mid-September 1928, a new biplane landed at the St. Paul Reserve. The Alexander Eagle Rock A2 had flown from Vancouver. There, its temporary Canadian registration had been processed after its delivery flight from the factory in Colorado. In June 1929, the band agreed to allow the Kamloops Air Club to use the reserve, subject to an annual lease. Late in 1930, Humphrey Madden arrived in Kamloops and set up a flying school on the reserve, unofficially known as Rattlesnake Field. On weekends, he and air engineer Joe Bertolino performed stunts and offered rides in his 1929 Fleet Model 2. In February 1931, Madden received a telegram from the Department of National Defense. His Kamloops Air Service was to cease operations until an airport was licensed at Kamloops. Madden and Bertolino moved their flying school to Columbia Gardens Airfield near Trail. The Kamloops Sentinel in June 1931 said the city had selected a new airport site, 80 acres near Brocklehurst, 5 miles northwest of the city on property owned by BC Fruitlands. In July 1932, the BC Air Tour arrived from Vernon. The aerial pageant was operated by the Aero Club of BC. Patterned after the Trans-Canada Air Pageant of the previous year, the objective was to promote aviation in BC. The air tour used the new airfield west of Brocklehurst. City Council announced in June 1933 that the Dominion government had proposed an extension to its relief scheme if the city were to purchase the 80 acres near Brocklehurst and have unemployed single men develop and improve the airfield site. This was the height of the Depression, and the city could not justify the purchase. By 1937, most other centers in British Columbia had civic airfields. By spring 1938, the city finalized an agreement with BC Fruitlands to purchase 45 acres and obtained a temporary operating license from the Department of Transport. During December 1938, G.C. Upson, Assistant Inspector, Civil Aviation, Department of Transport, Vancouver, examined the field. It was declared satisfactory. C.D. Howe, the Federal Minister of Transport, said his government would grant $6,000 to upgrade the airport and pave the runway. In mid-January 1939, the Kamloops Flying Club was organized. 3 months later, on April 13th, the first official landing, when Cyril Jackson landed his Aeronca. The airport was designated an official customs port of entry on August 1st, 1939. On August 5th, the airport held its grand opening. The Kamloops Air Show of 1939 included a Stinson Reliant. On November 1st, 1939, the first official airmail flight from Kamloops to Prince George and Whitehorse was flown using a Yukon Southern Air Transport Barclay Grow aircraft under the command of Sheldon Luck. In mid-April 1942, the Gilbert's Flying School of Vancouver moved to Kamloops. All civil training west of the Coast Mountains was curtailed for the duration of the war. For a time, the flying school was the only one west of Winnipeg. The Kamloops Flying Club ceased activity throughout the war years. Between 1939 and 45, the airport was developed by the RCAF as an alternate aerodrome. It was used by the RCAF and the United States Air Transport Command. Kamloops Airport was designated by the RCAF as number 16 staging unit on the interior staging route. This would assist the United States in its Lend-Lease program, supplying aircraft to Russia via Alaska. The airport was considered a possible second line of defense should Japan invade Canada's west coast. The DND purchased another 861 acres and rebuilt runways to 5,200 feet. Taxiways were added and 12 buildings built between December 1942 and June 1943. The RCAF staff complement at the time was more than 100. At the end of hostilities, surplus land was sold to the city. The Department of Agriculture reduced the airport to 570 acres. In mid-November 1945, a flying club was again organized at Kamloops. It was affiliated with the Aero Club of British Columbia. In the late 1940s, Harry Taylor and Pete Cornwell formed Taylor Cornwell Air Services, followed soon by Kamloops Air Services, organized by Harry Bray. By the early 1950s, Central BC Airways had moved to Kamloops, and in 1951 made Kamloops its headquarters. Central BC was formed by Russ Baker, later of Pacific Western Airlines. Baker had acquired a contract from the province to provide forestry protection services. This effectively eliminated all competition at Kamloops. After extensive renovations, in August 1964, the airport was opened by Federal Minister of Transport John Pickersgill. Some 20 years earlier, the airport had been named Fulton Field to honor Wing Commander John Fulton, DSO, as well as airmen who lost their lives during the Second World War. Adjacent to the airport is an art installation depicting a Royal Canadian Air Force Snowbird jet, a memorial to RCAF Captain Jennifer Casey. Casey was killed when a Snowbird jet crashed in Kamloops in May 2020. Kamloops Airport is known as YKA and also known as Fulton Field and John Moose Fulton Airfield. It is a regional airport 9 kilometers west-northwest of the city. It is owned by the Kamloops Airport Authority Society and operated by Kamloops Airport Limited.